Welcome to another moving crime story, Ana Walshe's case. The day Ana disappeared, there was no warning, no scream, no struggle, just an empty house and a husband.
January 1st, 2023 was meant to be a day of celebration, but for Ana Walshe, it became the day she vanished without a trace. In the small, affluent town of Cohasset, Massachusetts, the Walshe family was a picture of perfection. Ana, a successful real estate executive, was known for her beauty, sharp intellect, and a life that seemed to have everything anyone could ask for. Her life, however, was about to unravel in the most terrifying of ways. The day Ana disappeared, there was no warning, no scream, no struggle, just an empty house and a husband with a story that didn't quite add up. Brian Walshe, her husband, reported her missing, claiming she left in the early hours of the morning, presumably heading for her job in Washington, D.C. But something about his story didn't sit right with the police. Ana was a mother of 3 young children. She wouldn't just leave, not without a word, not without a trace. The clock was ticking. The air in the Walshe home grew thick with fear and uncertainty, and the community, once calm, soon found themselves tangled in a web of lies and deceit that would shock the world. As the search for Ana intensified, the questions grew louder. What happened to Ana Walshe? And, more chillingly, why was Brian Walshe acting so strange? The crime, it began with a call. A desperate plea for help. Brian Walshe called the police just after 8 a.m., reporting that his wife had vanished. "I'm scared. I don't know where she went," Brian's voice cracked over the phone, his words thick with a sense of urgency. But the details of his account, how Ana, in the middle of the night, had left their home in a rush, as if she were in some kind of hurry, didn't seem right. Ana had been leaving for work in Washington for years. The story didn't match the woman who was always meticulous about her schedule, especially leaving without a word. The investigation into Ana's disappearance started off with what appeared to be an open and shut case. But the deeper detectives dug, the more unsettling the details became. Brian claimed that Ana had left behind her phone and her purse, the very things one would take when leaving on a journey. Yet, why would she leave without any trace of herself? Why hadn't she taken her wallet or her personal items? The police found other strange signs when they combed through the house. A trail of her personal belongings, untouched, leading to nowhere. But what stood out the most were the surveillance cameras that captured a chilling series of events. Brian Walshe's behavior, initially casual, grew more erratic with each passing hour. A man who should have been frantic, a man whose wife had just vanished, was instead composed, almost too composed. Neighbors began to talk. Friends began to question. Something felt wrong. Ana had been a woman who cared deeply about her family, her career, her children. She wouldn't just vanish. But as the days went on, and as Brian's story started to fall apart, a darker possibility started to take shape. The authorities began to focus on Brian, with growing suspicion surrounding him. The question was no longer where Ana had gone, but why Brian Walshe seemed to be hiding something. The investigation. The police launched an all-out search. Helicopters flew over the nearby woods, drones scoured the vast forests, and volunteers combed through the surrounding areas in hopes of finding Ana alive. But with each passing day, hope seemed to dim. The absence of physical evidence, the lack of a ransom note, the absence of any messages or signs of forced entry into the house. It was as if Ana had simply vanished into thin air. Yet the more they investigated, the clearer it became that something wasn't adding up. Detectives began to probe into Brian's past. The man who had seemed so distraught now seemed guarded, evasive. Was his grief real, or was it just an act? His story kept changing, each detail growing murkier than the last. Then came the bombshell. Detective interviews revealed Brian's history of financial instability and questionable behavior. The lies began to surface, the inconsistencies in his timeline growing impossible to ignore. Brian, they discovered, had been under intense pressure from mounting debt. Could that have been a motive? Did Ana's disappearance somehow fit into his increasingly reckless and desperate life? The breakthrough came with the discovery of Brian's online activity, a trail of financial transactions that led investigators to places they never expected. Was Ana the victim of a violent crime, or had something darker, more premeditated, occurred in the Walsh household? As investigators uncovered more disturbing clues about Brian's behavior, it became clear his involvement in Anna's disappearance was no longer a question of if but how. The pieces were falling into place, and each step closer to the truth revealed something more chilling than the last. The trial and public reaction. The media storm surrounding Ana Walshe's disappearance had already grown to a fever pitch. The public, gripped by the bizarre and haunting details of the case, couldn't help but speculate. The idea that Anna's own husband could be involved in her murder seemed like something out of a nightmare. But the trial would reveal far more than anyone had anticipated. As Brian stood in court, the weight of the evidence against him began to mount. The shocking discovery of forensic evidence from the crime scene, blood traces, DNA samples, finally linked him directly to the horrific crime. The courtroom was filled with tension as prosecutors laid out their case, each piece of damning evidence meticulously presented. Brian, once calm and composed, was now visibly shaken, his defense teetering on the edge of collapse. The media coverage was relentless. Social media, news outlets, and true crime enthusiasts followed the trial closely, dissecting every new revelation. Brian's family, once supportive, now found themselves in a nightmare of their own. The Walsh family name was forever tainted, and as each layer of the investigation was peeled back, it became increasingly clear this was no simple case of a missing woman. The aftermath. With Brian's conviction, the questions that had plagued the investigation were, for the most part, answered. But in the wake of the trial, the true horror of the Walsh family's tragedy was revealed. Brian had been hiding a life of lies, deceit, and overwhelming debt. But what motivated him to take the life of his wife, the mother of his children? Was it truly financial strain that drove him to such a shocking act? Or was there something more sinister beneath the surface? The lasting impact of Anna's death on her family, especially her young children, was devastating. And as the investigation continued to uncover details about Brian's life, the public's fascination with the case only grew. For Anna's family and friends, the nightmare of her death and Brian's betrayal would never fully dissipate. The wound would remain open, the questions unanswered. Could anyone have seen the signs? Could anyone have known that behind the facade of a loving husband, something far darker was lurking? Trust can be a dangerous thing. In a world where everything may seem perfect, where the masks we wear can be so convincing, the darkest secrets often lie just beneath the surface, waiting to emerge. Brian Walsh's carefully constructed world had crumbled, and with it, the life of a woman who trusted him with everything. In the end, it's not just the crime itself that lingers in the mind. It's the chilling thought that the person you trust the most, someone who swears they love you, could be the one to take it all away. Thanks for your time on our channel.